So, well, first thing we want to do, just like usual, is go through our prayer list. Herman Fitzwater has to have open heart surgery again tomorrow. It's kind of a follow-up from what he had the last time. So then Jessie starts her high-powered chemo tomorrow. She'll be in the hospital 3 to 5 days, depends on how she handles it and all that at Franciscan South. Lloyd Zuber and just his kind of continuing things. Marianne seems to be doing pretty well, but continue to remember her. And then Randy's still got it. Alex and Carol have both got something that I think she said Alex had been tested and he wasn't positive. Randy was tested twice and he wasn't positive. So, do I?
He went and got tested again the other day. That's the third time.
Third time, okay. They said 3 times now, so. But he sounds like he's about 2 steps up off of death. I mean, he sounds really, really bad when you talk to him. But so anyway.
Mary Alice Barnes.
Oh, Mary Alice Barnes, she's recuperating. That we found out last week that she'd actually fallen, broken a hip, been to the hospital, been to rehab, and when we found out and she was called, she was on her way back to her residence. So she's still got a long ways to go with all of that and everything. And then Carol Keller was with us this morning. First time she's got out, and she starts rehab pretty soon. And that's not going to be fun. So all of those and people that are still trapped in the snow and all that. Gail's church, Newport and Eugene, didn't have church today because the roads weren't cleared yet. So anyway. Let's pray. Father, we just thank you for this day, this opportunity to be here where we're warm and dry and able to get around, and just ask your blessing upon us. And we just thank you that we can come together to pray for all these folks that we mentioned on this evening, Lord, and we just ask your blessings upon them all. And Lord, we just pray for our church and for all that are part of it. Lord, we're thankful for everybody that's joined with us on this evening for this study, and just ask that you be with us, open our hearts, our minds, our spirits to your word and what it says, that, that we can see the truths that are there, the messages that are there, that we might grow through them, know you better, and live by them. And all these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. We are in chapter 28. We're actually ready for 13, but I'm going to start reading at 10 because that's the beginning of the story, and we talked a little bit about it last time. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. And how many miles is that? Anybody remember from last time?
20.
Yep, 20 times 25. It's about 500 miles. Depends on exactly where he went in Haran and all that. It could have been anywhere from about 500 to 600 miles, walking by himself. So when he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head, lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, its top reaching heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All people on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob woke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head. He set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the place the house of God, and we pronounce that Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Jacob made a vow, saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's house, then the Lord will be my God, and this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. So just one quick review. We said that for years everybody talked about the ladder, and the ladder to heaven. And it's actually, they know now from other languages that are similar to the old ancient Hebrews that would have been spoken in those days, that it's closer to stairway. It's the only time that word is used in all of the Bible, which was where some of the confusion comes from. But it was used, that term referred to stairways and other languages in which it was really similar. So, and a stairway makes a whole lot more sense than somebody climbing ladders back and forth to heaven. The other thing we talked about is where do angels live? On the earth, because it's one of the things it says they ascended and descended. So they left the earth, went to God, they come back to the earth. So the angels are on the earth, the messengers of God. And so that was who was going up and down the ladder or the stairway. It wasn't people that were going up and down the stairway. This is the angels. Now, 13. So there above it stood the Lord. Now that term there above it can also mean above you or beside you. So there are some that actually think that this, and it makes a whole lot more sense to say that God was standing beside Jacob, not above Jacob at the top of the stairway. So he speaks to him and says, what? I'm the God of what?
Your father Abraham
And
Isaac.
And Isaac. Now, of course, which one's alive? Isaac. Abraham's already died. So he doesn't say, I was. God is always the I am. And actually, that even comes into play, and Jesus quotes Moses at the burning bush when God, or quotes from the story of Moses at the burning bush, when God said, I am the God of Abraham, I am the God of Isaac, I am the God of Jacob. That God didn't say, I was their God, and Jesus says that's a sign that they are living. And here, too, we have one that's dead and one that's living, but God uses the same term for both of them. I am the God of Abraham, I am the God of Isaac. And now, one of the points is he doesn't mention Abraham's father, right? He starts with Abraham because that's where the covenant starts. That's where the promise starts. That's where the blessing, whatever you want to call it, starts with Abraham. And that's what God's wanting to get to. So I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of Isaac. I am here to be your God. So what was the promise that God made to Abraham and Isaac?
That they would be many.
Yeah.
Lots of descendants.
Yeah, your descendants will live in this land. Not so much that you would, although he told Isaac, don't leave the land, but they didn't own anything there other than the graveyard or their grave. And so who's he going to, he reiterates the same promise in the same way. And who's he say the promise is to? It's to Jacob, but it's for his descendants. So he's not telling Jacob that you're gonna own this. He said, I'm giving you and your descendants. So that means he's giving it to the descendants. And Jacob doesn't end up owning anything other than the graveyard by the time it's all done. As a matter of fact, he ends up his life, when this is jumping ahead to the end of the book, but where does he end up his life? In Egypt. Joseph sends for him and brings them all down to Egypt. So he ended up not being there. And so God tells him, I will give you, and so it's not that I have given you, I will give you, you and your descendants, the land on which you are lying. And they're going to be how many? Like the dust of the earth. That's too many to be counted. You can't hardly count the grains of dust or of the dirt. And spread out to the west, east, north, and south. Let me thumb to something real quick here. Okay, that one's good enough. This is a map of the Holy Land. I'll raise it up where they can see it on the camera. This is the map of the Holy Land, and get my finger where it needs to be. Right there at the tip of my finger, just over from the Dead Sea, that's where Bethel is located. So when it says north, south, I gotta think, east and west, whichever way it is, let's see, I gotta turn around and look at it. Okay, west and east, that's Bethel is pretty well in the center of what came to be the Holy Land. kind of going back to it, the Holy Land ends up, the promise goes from down here. Beersheba's down in here. Dan is up here. There's the Sea of Galilee, and there's the Dead Sea. So it was all that area, all this area. And so that's exactly what they end up with. North, south, east, and west. Bethel's just about in the center of the area where he's at there, which also makes sense. God picked a land to be involved in, and so it's basically from the center of land. If it wasn't from the center, we would think it would be in Jerusalem. But at this point in time, Jerusalem is not even in the picture or even thought of. So, and then we have that term that is taken differently between Jews and Christians. All people on the earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. So we as Christians, what do we see that blessing referring to? Jesus, the one who was the descendant of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Judah, David, on down the line. What the Jews see that is that all the nations of the earth would be blessed through the Jewish Torah, the monotheism, the ethics, and with us, and sharing in those ethics, now they call them the Judeo-Christian ethics. But the Jews see that as how all the people on the earth are going to be blessed through the lessons that God teaches the earth through the Jewish people, which we call the Old Testament. And the Jews see that, not all of them, but there is a general thought in the Jews that is their purpose on the earth, to display God's goodness and grace and to bring the world to God. So now, God says, I am with you and will watch over you where? Wherever you go. And what's he going to do? Bring him back. And I will not leave you till I've done what I promised you. Now, it doesn't sound like much to us because we think of God as a universal God. And, we talked about in our service this morning about that Isaiah with his view of the robe of God coming down and spread all over the earth, that all the earth is under God's control. You got to remember, though, back in those days, they had geographical deities that this land or this country or that one up there or this one over there, they all had their own gods. And it was upon the geography. And the only way that your God went with you is if he was able to defeat the God of the country that you were going. And they actually saw wars as, and we see that all the way through Kings and Chronicles and Jeremiah and even Isaiah and a lot of them as wars. The gods fought first, and then whatever the gods won, the people won after that. So when he says, I am with you here, right? I'm standing beside you, so I'm with you, and I will go with you wherever you go. So it's not just I'll be here when you get back, and I'll see you when you get back, and all that kind of stuff. And I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. So there's the promise that God's going to, it's not just that Jacob's going to come back, God is going to bring him back. God is going to be involved in how he returns. And and I will not leave you until I've done what I have promised you. Now, does that mean that God's going to leave him at some point? Sounds like it if you just read that, but the whole promise has never yet come to pass through Jacob's lifetime. So God doesn't leave him, and he is with him. So Jacob wakes up from his sleep. He sees this all in a vision and a dream, and he wakes up, and what's he say? Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I feel his mighty power and his grace. The touch of angel wings. I can feel the brush of angel wings. I see glory on his face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. It kind of comes back to this, with the angels coming and going, the presence of God is there, and all of that. But he says, this is where God's at. I didn't even realize it. Now, is that a real statement or not? How many people have gone through things in their lives and say, God was involved in this, God was here. I didn't realize it till I saw him. I didn't realize that God was involved in this, or that angels were around, and all of those things. So, but now? How did he respond emotionally to it? He was afraid. Because anytime you see God, it has a tendency to make you afraid, or angels. And you know the number, we've talked about this before, whether you remember or not, you should know that. What is the number one statement of all angels in the Bible? Do not be afraid. Even Christmas, how was it that the angels to the shepherds started off? Fear not. You know, for I bring you glad tidings of great joy. I'm not bringing you bad news. I'm bringing you good news, because they always had this fear. When the angel showed up, it was to escort you home. And so it's home, like Amelia said this morning, home, not to your house or to your driveway. So he's afraid. I mean, and when you stop and think about it, if you saw God in His glory, it would have that kind of effect on me. And and how awesome is this place? It's none other than the house of God and the gate of heaven. So for them, and especially with his vision that he had here, and that God has shown him, this is a special place. This land that I am giving you is special than any other place in the earth. He didn't have those kind of visions in Haran. Or Padam Haran, whatever you want to call it. He didn't have them in Egypt. This is where he has it. And so he said, this is none other than the house of God, which is what in Hebrew? Bethel. B-E-T-H. Bethlehem, we say Bethphage. It's actually Bethphage, Bethany. Although anytime you see B-E-T-H, it means house. Bethlehem is the house of bread. Bethphage is the house of figs. I can't remember what Bethany is. But anytime you see that, which it always kind of interested me. I used to cruise across, they call it 10th Street, just one road north of 36. And you can bring it from Indianapolis all the way into the north side of Danville. And sometimes if the traffic's heavy and everything, it's a good way to avoid traffic. And so I'd come through there every once in a while when I was working over in that area. And there's a church over there that's called El Bethel, which I never could understand. That's God's house of God. So is what that El, anytime you see El, that is the generic term God. And, we have El Shaddai, God Almighty, and El, different things. Or you see it on the end of a name. It means of God and all that. So Bethel means God's house, or house of God. And so it appears that he woke from his sleep. Now, whether he stays up all night or if he goes back to sleep, it says early the next morning, Jacob took the stone. Maybe he's just waiting for daylight or whatever. It doesn't really say. But if you're just sleeping out in the open country, and they didn't have a whole lot of shade trees and things like that up through that area, then when the sun comes up, usually you're getting up. So he took the stone, and what's he do with it?
Set it on the pillar, put oil on it.
Set it up as a pillar and poured oil on it. Why would he do that? So usually rocks are laying down, right? When you see a rock that's turned up, does that tell you that somebody did it? And then when you pour oil on a rock, what does it do to the rock? Now, we're not talking about granite that we have over here. It was more like, their rock is more like sandstone, or pretty well sandstone. So when you pour oil on a piece of sandstone, what does it do? Yep, it absorbs it all in, and it stains it. And so two things. You're going to see that rock's turned up, and it's going to have oil in it. And, no more than it rains or anything over there. It's going to stay that way for a long time. It's going to be stained. So anybody that passes by is going to see that rock and know this is a special place. For whatever reason, now they may not understand what it was, but they know somebody turned this up and set it. When we go out west, you go hiking a lot of places, you get into some pretty remote areas, and people will do that. They'll turn a rock up or they'll take and they'll set up a little stack of rocks. And then usually somebody starts a stack and somebody else comes by, you put another rock on top of the stack. Just say one more person's been there. It just says somebody's been here, this has been special for somebody. And that's the way that was. And it was also a marker because, he's planning on coming back to that place. So when he comes back to that place, he knows he is at that place. And the house of God and the gate of heaven. So this is where God's living. This is it. God's front door is what he's basically saying here. The front door to go from heaven to earth, or earth to heaven, actually. So he sets up that pillar, pours the oil on it, and calls it the house of God, though the city used to be called Luz. Now, is he in the city? Probably not. Probably outside. And because he sets up the stone and all that. But it'd be like if he was traveling along and you were out towards our house or down towards your guys' house or out towards theirs, and you were in town, so you don't. This is the Marty and Mary Jane over here, Bob and Janie on this side, or us, we live out. Theirs isn't. Our address is Rockville. Theirs is Bainbridge, and there's Clinton, probably, isn't it?
Rosedale.
What is it, Rosedale? So, but you don't live anywhere close to Rosedale, do you? Then we don't live. We're 12 miles from Rockville, so it's one of those things. If you set something up out on the way, if you're traveling any of those directions and set it up and called it by that, you might say, well, this, they called this area Rockville or Bainbridge or Rosedale, but it really wasn't. And that's what it is. So it's that same kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily mean he was in town. So then he makes a vow. And what kind of vow does he make?
Well, God keeps him and gives him bread and clothing, he make it his God.
What's he actually asking God to do here?
Take care of him.
He's actually in form of agreement. What would we call it?
Almost like a bargain.
He's wanting a contract. And if I do X, you do Y. Or if you do Y, I'll do X. Or if you don't do Y, you're going to be an X. That stuff happens too. I wasn't really talking about marriages, but I guess that counts also. What I was talking about is, people say, here's the contract. If you don't do it, I'm not obligated to do my part. And so, and there are a lot of people that try to make contracts with God. So Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will watch over me, and so that I return, then, that comes up in the next verse up there. If then, and there's a lot of, people use if then statements quite a bit. If you will do all these things, then I will do these things. So we have a contract. And if you're not willing to do that, then I'm released from it. And Jacob doesn't put it, I will do these things and then you do this. And so it's really not, there's a lot of people that in their own minds try to do that with their faith today. Jews, and that was what it was with Jesus' day. It was, if I follow the commandments, including not just the 10 or the 600, but the thousands that the Talmud has and all that they developed from the 10 commandments and the others. If I do that, then God owes me salvation. And that was the problem that they had, that Jesus had with some of the Pharisees and things. It was an accounting type thing. If I do all these, then that means that God owes me this, and it's supposed to balance out at the end. But Christians do the same thing too. God, if you'll answer my prayer, if you'll do this, if you'll do that, then I'll serve you, or I'll do whatever. And usually it's if you get me out of this situation, then I promise I'll go to church every Sunday, or I'll start giving offerings. I'll start praying. I will do whatever. But God, you got to do your part first. And in that, is that really a faith statement? No, it's a conditional statement. And you know, the Jews have a saying that goes back a couple thousand years or more. That says that, you know, your reward is not, you know, you don't follow the commandments so that God does things for you. You follow the commandments because God has done His thing and has set the commandments up, and we do that as a response. And it's kind of the same thing with Christian. Oh, their phrase is the reward for keeping the commandment is keeping the commandment, and what keeping the commandment does for you. You know that. Just like if you know it says that you don't give false testimony, then the reward for not giving false testimony is you live a life that in which you've not given that, and people know that, and your reputation and all the things that goes along with that, and then you're not worrying about what you told one person versus what you told somebody else, and all those sort of things. And we as Christians, though, a lot of people still do that same sort of thing, but it's not supposed to be a deal. We do things in response to what God does for us, not. In a response of thanksgiving, not as a condition, but as a response. So, but Jacob, you know, he's still just kind of learning. He doesn't have all the rest of this to go by and to learn. He's kind of making his way on his own, and he's just met God, just had his God experience in a way that was different. Now he's known about God all of his life. He's known about the blessing and all that, but it's a whole lot different when you know about God, or if God appears to you. And so that's where he's at now. And so that's what he's looking for. Now, it almost sounds, I mean, you can see a little bit of something else in there with food to eat, clothes to wear, and safety. And it's almost like, what did we say this morning? Give us this day our daily bread. And because he doesn't ask for, he's just, give me the food to eat. He doesn't ask for a feast. He just says, let me be sustained. You know, and the thing to remember about it, and he's talking on what period of time is he talking about? On this journey I'm taking. So again, he, like Rachel, doesn't think he's going to be gone very long. It's a journey. Usually a journey, you go out and back. And of course, he's gone for a long time, about 20 years actually, by the time it's all said and done. So, but on a journey, you know, traveling from Bethel, which he's about 100 miles into his 500-mile trip, or about 60 miles. But anyway, you know, there's no McDonald's or Cracker Barrel or any other place like that to eat. You're looking for fruit trees, berry bushes, anything like that you can find that you can eat along the way. And depending upon the goodness of strangers and all that. And at this point in time, we are way ahead of the law by about 500 years before it gets to the point that says that when you're traveling through this land, that you can go into someone's garden, into their farm field or wherever, and you can eat what you can eat at that time. You can't take anything with you, but that's how God provided for the people that were traveling. Well, Jacob doesn't know if anybody going to feed him. Is there going to be food? You know, he could starve to death on the journey. So that's what he's asking for. Give me food to eat and clothes to wear, and because what's he got with him? Probably the clothes on his back is all he has. And that I return safely to my father's house. So is he going to return safely to Esau's house? No, he's figuring it's going to blow over. He's going to be going back to his father's house. You know, that's where he fled from. You got to go out, give Esau time to cool off. I'll come back. Just like Rachel said, when he cools off, I'll what? Yeah, I'll send for you so that you can come back home and be reunited with the family. So even Jacob still got that view that it's just going to be a short period of time. He's not thinking in a 20-year time frame, and because he's planning on going back to his dad. And why was it that Jacob gave the blessing then? Because he thought he was going to die any day, and he wanted to make sure that he got the blessing given. It's what got the whole thing started. So that's his conditions. Watch over me on the journey, food to eat, clothes to wear, return back to my family. If you can do those things, then the Lord or will be my God. And the stone I've set up will be a pillar, will be God's house. And he said, in other words, this is where I'm going to come back to. This is God's house where I want to return, because God said this is the center of what I'm giving you, north, south, east, west. And so that's where he's at. And so now, and he set this stone up as that marker, and to show that it's God's house. And what else does he agree to do? Give a tenth. And of all that you give me, I will give you back a tenth. Now, we don't have the tithing rules or laws or anything yet. We don't read anything about Isaac ever giving a tenth. The only time we read about anybody really giving a tenth was Abraham after his war that he had to get Lot back. And as he goes to Jerusalem, or to Salem as it was called at that time, and Melchizedek comes out, he gave him a tenth of everything at that time. That's the only other time that's here. But to be a regular giver of a tenth, this is the first time that shows up in the Bible. And that is, and here, what is it? It is a response to what God has done. If you will take care of me, you will watch over me, you will feed me, you will give me clothes and keep me safe on my journey, then whatever you give me, I will honor you by giving you back a tenth. So here's the whole philosophy of the tithe before it ever gets to the tithe later on with Moses. So, chapter 29, then Jacob continued on his journey and came to the land of the eastern peoples. There he saw a well in the field with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it, because the flocks were watered from that well. The stone over the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone away from the well's mouth and water the sheep. Then they would return the stone to its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob asked the shepherds, "My brothers, where are you from?" "We're from Haran," they replied. He said to them, "Oh, do you know Laban?" It's actually, a lot of people call him Laban. His name's actually Laban. So I may go one way or the other. So if I go, when I was at school, you had to say Laban. Everybody else says Laban. So whichever way it is, he's the same guy. "Do you know Laban, Nahor's grandson?" "Yes, we know him," they answered. And Jacob asked them, "Is he well?" "Yes, he is," they said. "And here comes his daughter Rachel with the sheep." "Look," he said, "the sun is still high. It's not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to the pasture." So these guys are weighing. I'll get to that in a minute. "We can't," they replied, "until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep." So we'll stop there until we catch up with all that. So he continues on his journey. That's one of the things we see, those kind of statements in the Bible. He continued on his journey, and he gets there. Well, we're so used to journeys being quick that as we read that, we think, well, the next day he pulled up in the driveway and he was there. But this is months later. He's been walking, and just think about it. Walking from here to Florida. It's not going to be an easy journey. It's not going to be quick, and you're going to be out in the elements and all that. So he continued his journey. Basically tells us it was pretty well uneventful from that point on, and kind of like remember the old movies we used to watch, or the old those little clips that they used to have. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the time's passed, but we're back to it, and that's kind of where we're here. So he comes to the land of the what people? Eastern people. So that what they're telling us is he is out of the area of the Canaanites. He's not in that area anymore. He is in the eastern peoples, a different ethnic group, and which is exactly what he's looking for, right? They are not Canaanites. They are from what country would they be from today? Would that town be located, or Abraham be from today? Or the Chaldeans? Iraq. So he would have been that's where his whole life started. That's where Rachel came from, and now, or not Rachel, Rebecca, and now he has gone back there, and they're saying he is back with the eastern peoples. And we really through the the Torah, I don't think we talk about anybody any farther east than that. You know, of course, through the Jewish history, we get into the point with the Babylonians, which is Iraq, and then we get into the Persians, which is Iran, and all of that. So later on, and so anyway, he gets there, and as he's coming up, there were 3 flocks of sheep. So there's 3 different sets of shepherds there with their flocks. How big do you think the flocks were? Nah, we don't know. It might have been 5. It could have been 50. It could have been 500. So depends on, usually the flocks weren't big because to be at a common well like this meant it was the common people, the people of the town that would bring their sheep in every day to feed them. And now if they had huge flocks, they had to be on those cycles that we talked about before, where they would take off for maybe a month at a time and move every day as the sheep and the goats and whatever they had were being fed. And so they are near the well because that's where they came for water every day. So what's the well got on it? A big rock, a heavy rock, and that it was over the mouth of the well, and it was large. Why do you think there was a rock on the well? I don't know. I thought maybe you knew. So, no, I mean it could be there could be 2 or 3 things. It could be to secure it, so that because it belonged to the town, and took the way that it's written is it should have taken more than one person to move it. They wait till there's several shepherds there to move the rock. Could have been to conserve the water, so that it doesn't evaporate out. And it could have been that some of the wells over there are 100 feet deep, to keep somebody from accidentally falling in a well. We don't know, but it was covered. So they would water their sheep and put the stone back, and then everybody would take them out. So how does Jacob address the shepherds?
Brothers.
Why would he call them my brothers? Yeah, well, there's a couple of reasons actually. One of them is that you want to make sure that when you're coming upon a strange group of people, and you're one and they're several, and you're in a strange country, you want them to know what?
You're a friend.
Yeah, you're a friend. I come in peace, and so that's part of it. Now the other part is, was he being honest? Where was his grandfather and grandmother from? Those people. Where was and then of course his father is born from 2 people who were part of the Eastern peoples. Where did his mother come from? From that same location. So they are his brothers. It would be like I don't know, somebody going, an African American going back to Africa and saying, "Hey, I'm here," or, well, that's probably not as good. Or I was trying to think like us going back to our family going back to Ireland, but it'd be closer than that. To where you'd just been away for 2 or 3 generations, and to go back and say, "Hey, I am one of you," and obviously he is doing what? Speaking their language. So, because he's communicating with them. And so there's a chance that he is what today we would call bilingual. He's speaking that language. It doesn't seem, there's no interpreter anywhere, and he has conversations with those people, with his family, with all of those things. So whatever language they would have been speaking, he is speaking their language. And so he's saying, I'm friends. I'm not just a friend. I am one of you. And I came from the same people. And so when he asked them, where are you from? And they said, Haran, because he didn't know if he's close. The whole way there, he's probably asking people on the way, which way is Haran? Or there were major roads that armies and different things traveled. And so that's the news he was looking for, right? He's kind of come to the end of the journey, because that's where he's headed to Haran. And so he asked him, do you know Laban? Now, what else does he ask him about Laban? or
he
Laban or
well?
whatever. Do what?
Is he well?
Well, no, before that, as he refers to him.
The son of Nahor.
The grandson.
He's the grandson of Nahor. Now, what's that telling them off the bat?
I know about you.
Yeah, I'm not only am I your brother, I know the family ties. I'm not just looking for Laban, but also know who his father is, who his grandfather is, and all of that. So, and he's relating to them at that place. So how do they answer?
Yes.
Yeah, we know him. Yeah, probably kind of. Yeah, whatever. And we don't know if that was a positive thing, a negative thing. They could have said, "Yeah, we know him," or "Yeah, we know him." It could have been anything like that. But the point of it is, it's kind of like the servant that came looking for Rebecca that finds out he's at the right place. Could have been the same well. And so it doesn't say it was. It doesn't say it wasn't. But Rebecca, there was not a stone there. But anyway, so. Is he well? Yeah, he's well. And as a matter of fact, what?
Comes his daughter.
Here comes his daughter with the sheep. And back in those days, that was a period of time in which, and for several centuries, especially with nomads, men and women both took care of the sheep. So the shepherds and shepherdess would have been in part of the same families and all those things. It was only when they kind of moved into towns and all that it became a separate task. Here comes his daughter Rachel, and so what does Jacob say to him?
The sun is still high.
Yep.
Not time to gather.
Yeah.
Get back
You guys.
to bed.
Yeah. Basically, he's speaking as a leader here, and kind of in front of Rachel, and he's also showing that he knows about flocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys shouldn't be in here now. The sheep aren't done eating for the day. It's the middle of the day. Why aren't you out there? You need to water these sheep and get back to work, basically is what he's saying. And water the sheep and take them back to pasture. That's not a request. He's not even saying why. He's telling them that's what you need to do, which is kind of bold, right? Guys that you don't know, that you first then, and you start off with brothers, then you say, get back to work, and so I think that's where we quit reading. So I'm gonna pick up and read to the end of this section again. Verse 8: We can't, they replied, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone has been rolled away from the mouth of the well. Then we will water the sheep. While he was still talking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and Laban's sheep, he went over and rolled the stone away from the mouth of the well and watered his uncle's sheep. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep aloud. He had told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and a son of Rebekah. So she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, "You are my own flesh and blood." And actually in the Hebrew it says, "You are my own skin and bones." Same thing. So anyway, he tells him to get back to work. And what do they say? We can't until all the flocks are. We just happen to come in halfway through the day, but we can't water them until everybody gets here and we roll the stone away from the mouth. And then when everybody's here and the stone gets rolled away, then we'll water the sheep and we'll go about our business. So he kind of sees that what they're going through, and Marty, you never dealt with anybody like that to work for you, did you? That took advantage of the situation and said, "Well, you said I couldn't do it, so I had to just sit around and wait, and take a nap, and all that." And we don't need names, but we probably all dealt with people like that, and you've seen people like that and around that. Now, could they roll the stone away?
They could.
There's a large room. Well, wait a minute.
He did.
Yeah. So they said, we can't until everybody gets here because it takes all of us to roll the
Yeah.
stone away. So while he was still talking with them, kind of resetting the story a little bit, here comes Rachel with the sheep. And so Jacob saw her, and the Bible tells us what about her? Real quick, it reminds us. Huh?
She was a shepherdess.
Well, not just that she is his cousin. She is the daughter of his uncle. And that's what it says, that when Jacob saw Rachel, daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, his cousin, and Laban's sheep, he went over and he rolled away from the stone and watered his uncle's sheep. So it wasn't so big of a stone, one guy. Now, and the other thing about it, when we first started reading about Jacob and Esau, what did it say about Jacob?
He was mama's boy.
Yep, he was a mama's boy and he hung around the tents, right? And so he must have been more than just a mama's boy too, because he pushes that stone out of the way. The one?
It was.
Yeah. So, well, he's a little bit more than that, because he does hear these guys all sitting around and they don't move it. He moves it. And then what does he do?
He kisses Rachel.
He waters the sheep.
Oh.
So, yeah. Now, what's interesting is, do you notice some of the parallels and contrast between this story and the one of his mother? There's the one where his mother's being chosen, and now he is choosing the next wife. There's 2 or 3. Number one, for Isaac, Abraham sends a servant to get him, and here Rebekah sends Jacob because there's a problem at home, and Isaac's kind of being protected and all that, and so they send the servant to do it. And the servant remember what the servants took with them? 10 camels loaded with stuff, and loaded with gifts and things, not counting what they might have taken for their own goods. So, and then Rebekah comes out, and what does she do? She waters the camels. Here, Jacob goes up, and Rebekah comes out, or Rachel comes out, and he removes the stone and waters the sheep. And so what do you think is the difference? Now, some say that, well, it just shows that he's his mother's son, that she was kind and she did all those things and he's doing it. But I think it's a whole lot more than that. He could have sat around, he could have waited, he could have done those things, or he could have just pushed the stone out of the way and let it. He is trying to impress her. He's got to impress whom? Whose sheep are they?
His uncles.
His uncles. Where is he headed? To his uncles. So what's he wanted to start off with? Yeah. So Rachel's probably going to have to be at the mercy of all the no counts that are sitting around waiting on the whole crowd to get there before, because it says that it was in the middle of the day, and he goes ahead and does it. And so he's telling these guys, you need to water them and get back. So he's also doing what he said that they needed to do. And he's watering the sheep. And so he waters his uncle's sheep. Then he does what? Kisses her. Now, this is not a passionate, I want to marry you type kiss. This would have been a greeting kiss, and of saying that basically, we are family. And then he began to weep aloud. So why do you think he was weeping aloud?
He finally got there.
Yeah.
Emotions.
I mean, just do what?
Emotions.
Yeah. I mean, just think of all the pent-up emotion that had to have been in Jacob. His brother's wanting to kill him. His mother sends him off. He doesn't know where he's going. And he's not going. I mean, he officially was going to get a wife, but he was basically going because he got run out of his house, and he's not welcome at home, and he's traveling. He didn't know where he was going. He's been out on the road by himself for months and having to fend for himself. Even when he was cooking and in the tents in the area of his mother and all that, the food was there, and all he had to do was just kind of get it out of the pantry, so to speak. And now, he's had to to do whatever it took to be able to eat along the way. He's finally gotten there. He's made the contact, and it all just comes out. Just the relief of all of it. So now, it doesn't say, but I'm sitting here thinking, what was Rebecca? What was going through her mind? Here's this guy that comes up and rolls the stones away. And you know, to think about it too, he would have looked a lot like them. You know, the Canaanite people would have looked, that was a different ethnic bunch and everything, and they would not have looked, or they might have been similar, but it's kind of like comparing the Jews today to the Iraqis today. There, you can tell a difference. If you put them both up there, you can pick out which one was which. And so he does look like them and all that. But here's a guy that comes up, waters the sheep, does all these things that she doesn't know from Adam. Kisses her on the cheek, busts out crying in front of her, and I'm sure she's probably not sure whether to run to tell her dad or to run to get away or whatever. But it says that he had told her that he was a relative and was the daughter of Rebecca. Now, do you think she knew who Rebecca was? Oh, yeah. I'm sure that story got told over and over and over again. How these rich camels came in and you know that their aunt was basically a queen somewhere and all these kind of things. So she runs and tells her father. And what does her father do?
He goes out and
And to meet him.
He comes running when he hears the news about his nephew, his sister's son. So he hurries to meet him. And what did he do?
Embraced him and kissed him and brought him home.
So why do you think he was in such a hurry to go meet him?
well, there might be gold.
How would it be?
Huh? I think you got it
There
right.
might be gold in
There might be gold in there. That's exactly right. I mean, think about the last time he saw somebody coming from that family, they brought 10 camels with them. And whether they got through that much of the conversation with him or not, but he's probably got it in his mind that he has got gold with him. As a matter of fact, there are some of the Bible scholars, Jews and Christians alike, that because it says that he embraced him, that he was basically feeling to see if he had any gold on him. You know, it wasn't just a give me a hug, my new nephew that I haven't seen anymore. But he embraces him, and see, he kisses him too. So that's what I'm saying. It was a family greeting type thing. So the same kind of kiss that Jacob gave Rachel. So I don't think that was a big slobbering kiss that he gave him or anything like that. That's the same word, the same kiss, just a greeting type kiss. Brings him to his home, and there Jacob told him all the things that had happened. And I'm sure Laban's going, oh boy. So now I've got this kid. He is my sister's son, and he's brought nothing with him. You know, not like when they came to get his sister, but he does recognize him as what?
So flesh and blood.
Family. He does recognize him as his nephew. You are my flesh and blood, and you are my flesh and blood, my skin and bones. In other words, we come from the same place, and we are family. So he recognizes him as family, which means he is accepting him as being the daughter or the son of his sister, that he believes all these stories and all that. And I'm sure part of it, and you know, it doesn't say here, but I'm just sure of it, that he probably started with the story of how the servant went to get Rebecca and brought her back and all that. So that would have done those things. So we got a few minutes left. So moving right along here with the second half of verse 14. After Jacob had stayed with him for a whole month, Laban said to him, just because you're a relative of mine, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be. Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was what? Cal. And the name of the younger one was you. So one, now, sounds funny to us, but these people are what? They're shepherds. They raise animals. And so the 2 girls' names were Cal and Ewe, E-W-E, like in a female sheep. So their names are female Cal, female sheep. And so Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel was lovely in form and beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, I'll work for you for 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel. Laban said, it's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me. So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed to him only like a few days because of his love for her. So he's there for a month. Get back to where we started, right? And what did he do during that month?
He worked.
He worked. Because Laban says, you know, why should you work for me for nothing? So in other words, he's been working for him. And so we see that kind of the work ethic of Jacob. We saw it at the well. You guys need to water those sheep and get back to work. We see him there as a relative for a month. He would not have been expected to have done anything. He would have been a guest through all that time. But we see that he was working. And so it gets to the point that Laban says, what do you want me to pay you? You know, if you're going to work, I need to pay you something. And so what's his answer? Well, he didn't get to his answers yet. Then they kind of throw us in that they have the two daughters, an older and a younger, Cal and you. And now what's it say about Leah? Yeah, she had weak eyes or soft eyes or dim eyes. There's a lot of different ways to translate it. And so what scholars kind of have a couple of different views of that. One of those is that that just her eyes didn't look very good, and just something around about them. But there's not very many that think that. But the biggest thing is that she was nearsighted, farsighted, something like that. You know, back in those days they didn't have glasses, and so, you know, when you get to that point that you have to bring something all the way up here to read it versus being able to read it over there, that would be strong eyes versus weak eyes. And what else do you do if you have hard time focusing? Squint to try. And so they kind of think that that's what it was, and that she's squinting a lot and looking a lot and having to get right up on something to see and all of those. And so, but what about Rachel? Lovely in form and beautiful. Nice body, pretty face.
Easy
So-
on your eyes.
Huh?
Easy on your eyes.
Easy on your eyes. So, and you know, that's one of those things that some people think that you should not notice those kinds of things, or they try to make it sound like nobody does. But everybody understands that people notice those things. Guys notice those things. Women notice those things. You know, and sometimes women notice them more than guys do about other women and all of that. But it's more that way for women than it is for men. But the Bible acknowledges that does cause a level of attractiveness, and it mentions it here. Is she the only one that's been called beautiful? No, up this time she's third one in line. Sarah was so beautiful that Abraham was afraid that she would be taken, he'd be killed because she was so beautiful. Isaac was afraid of that with Rebekah and all of that. And now we have Rachel and Leah, who maybe was not so beautiful. So Jacob had a favorite. And which one was that? Rachel. He was in love with Rachel. Now, this is one of the few times that love comes into play in the marriages in the Bible. In the Bible, and especially not just the Bible, in customs of those days. You know, it's just like, did Rebekah love Isaac? No, she'd never seen him until they got married, you know, and all those kind of things. And so that was not part of the deal. You know, it was a business transaction is how weddings came to be. But here we actually have, for one of the first times, somebody being emotionally attracted to someone and bringing about that marriage. So that's something that's kind of new to the human condition as we're going through these things right here. And so he was in love with Rachel, And how long has he been there?
A month.
A month. So this is almost love at first sight type thing. And so he says, what?
He'll work 7 years in return.
Yeah, I'll work for you for 7 years. Because, now why would he have to do that?
7 years?
Or any years? Why would he have said that?
He didn't have anything else to use.
Exactly. Martha said he didn't have anything else. He didn't have anything to offer. There needed to be a dowry. You did not just marry someone. If you remember back, with his mother, they sent 10 camels full of stuff to get her, and that's the way that it was. And up until almost recent years, that's the way weddings were arranged. Remember, I said it was a business deal. I'll give you my daughter to marry your son. What have you got to offer? And what is the dowry? And all those kind of things. And that goes on for centuries and thousands of years afterwards. He has nothing to offer. So he has to earn her. And so he decides that he will work 7 years, which is considered a complete time or whatever. And I'm going to go ahead through the next little paragraph, and then that gives us a good stopping place. So what's Laban's reaction?
That it's better to give her to him than to marry her off.
Yeah, he seems pretty indifferent about it, doesn't it? Yeah, well, might as well let her marry you as one of these local boys, I guess. And that's exactly the way that it's written. Better I give her to you than some other man. Stay here with me. Because what's he thinking?
He got 7 years of free labor.
That's exactly what he's getting. 7 years of free labor. And he's going to end up getting how many before the story's over? 14. But anyway, so he's saying, yes, when he says, stay here with me, he's saying, all right, I agree to it. Might as well let you have her somebody else. And so Jacob served his 7 years to get Rachel, and what?
Seemed like a few days.
Seemed like only a few days because of his love for her. That's and when it comes to romance, this story between the two of them is probably one of the most romantic ones in the book of Genesis, if not the most, and one that carries on for quite a while, because weddings were not about romance. Romance came after the wedding, and this is a new concept, and that he cared for her that deeply that 7 years seemed like nothing as it passed. And so we will pick up with verse 21 the next time. So hope you learned something. Glad you were on there with us. Saw a couple of new names and things. And so just go out and be blessed and be a blessing to others. And we'll see you on the next time around.